The darkened expanse of space stretched out before Captain Isla Kiran, her gaze fixed on the star-strewn horizon. It had been 2 years since the last major battle with the Coral, an alien species known for their unpredictable nature and superior technology. Since then, the galaxy had been at an uneasy peace, one that Isla had learned to cherish, but knew could shatter at any moment. The ship she commanded, the Dauntless, was a ship of war, designed for battle. Yet, despite its advanced weaponry, the crew had grown restless in the absence of conflict. There was no sense of purpose in the quiet. Until the message came. A faint distress signal, transmitted in a code older than any known in the galaxy, had appeared in their communications array without warning. It had come from a location well beyond any established chart, a derelict zone in deep space where few ships dared venture. The signal was cryptic, repeating only one phrase: "The black ship is coming." Isla had been reluctant to follow, but curiosity, coupled with the sense of duty that came with being a captain, drove her forward. The captain was a leader by action, not by words. She commanded her crew not with fear, but with respect, and she could see it in their eyes, the same question that haunted her thoughts: what is the black ship? Chapter 2: The Search. The Dauntless cruised through the deep, cold reaches of space. The ship's hull glided over stars like a blade through the night. Isla stood on the command deck, her hands clasped behind her back, staring at the holographic display of the surrounding sector. "Captain," said Lieutenant Cyrus Tavros, his voice as calm as always, though she could hear the curiosity in his tone. "We've been at this location for hours now, but there's nothing on the scanners. No ships, no debris. It's almost like the signal isn't even real." Isla glanced over her shoulder, meeting his gaze. "It's real, Tavros. Someone wants us to find it. Keep scanning. I don't believe this is a mistake." The silence that followed weighed heavy on the crew. The black ship was a myth. It was said to have appeared suddenly in ancient records, disappearing just as quickly, destroying entire fleets in moments before vanishing into the void. Its origin was unknown, and no ship had ever successfully engaged it. It was spoken of only in whispers, and stories told by those who survived attacks, and even then, many doubted its existence. Yet the signal was undeniable. As the hours dragged on, Isla's mind raced through possible scenarios. Could it be a trap? Could the Coral have found a way to deploy a secret weapon that could mimic the black ship's signature? The possibilities were endless, but she knew one thing for certain: if there was even a chance that this could be real, they had to investigate. "Captain," said Lieutenant Tavros, his voice breaking through her thoughts. "We're getting a strange reading now. It's faint, but something's out there. We're closing in on it." Isla's heart skipped a beat. "Prepare for immediate approach. Give me a visual on whatever this is." The crew sprang into action, and within moments, the forward viewing screen shifted from the starry void to an object, an immense, shadowed vessel, drifting slowly. It had no lights, no markings, and no visible propulsion. Its shape was unlike anything Isla had ever seen: sleek, angular, and impossibly massive, with curves that defied logic. Tavros took a cautious breath. That's the black ship. Chapter 3: The Black Ship. The black ship loomed before them like a specter. It was silent, its presence suffocating. Isla could feel her heart pounding in her chest, the weight of the unknown pressing in on her every thought. "What should we do, Captain?" asked Tavros, his voice slightly strained. Isla's fingers hovered over the controls. "We need to board it. Prepare a team." A murmur rippled through the crew. The black ship was notorious for its complete isolation: no communications, no survivors. No one had ever boarded it and returned. But Isla was no stranger to risks. She had led her crew through impossible odds before. "We're not leaving until we know what happened here," she said, her voice strong. "Prepare for an EVA. We're going in." A small team was assembled quickly: Tavros, Dr. Sophia Lau, the ship's chief scientist, and 2 of the most experienced members of the engineering crew. The boarding party suited up, the heavy bulk of their spacesuits sealing them in as they moved to the airlock. As the airlock opened, Islaw's team floated toward the black ship, their thrusters gently propelling them toward its ominous surface. The closer they got, the more Islaw felt a strange sense of unease wash over her. The ship was perfect in its dark symmetry, as if it were waiting for something. Tavros led the way, his voice crackling over the comms. "We're at the entry hatch. No signs of life. Nothing's moving." Dr. Lau's voice cut through next, her tone clinical but tense. "Captain, this is unlike any ship I've ever seen. The materials seem organic, almost." Islaw's heart raced. "Can you get it open?" Tavros responded almost immediately. "I'll try." The hatch opened with a creaking sound, and the team entered the interior of the black ship. The moment they stepped inside, the lights flickered on faint, eerie glows that illuminated long, dark corridors. "Stay close," Islaw ordered, her voice steady despite the growing fear within her. They moved through the ship, their footsteps echoing in the silence. The walls, smooth and organic, seemed to pulse ever so slightly, as if alive. A hum filled the air, a low vibration that reverberated through their bodies. The deeper they ventured, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. In the central chamber, they found it. A vast, cylindrical object at the center of the ship pulsating with an otherworldly energy. It was a core, but not like anything Islaw had ever seen before. It was dark, almost liquid in appearance, swirling with shifting patterns that defied comprehension. This is a weapon," Dr. Lau whispered. "But it's unlike anything we've ever encountered." Before Islaw could respond, the entire ship seemed to shudder. The lights flickered violently, and the hum grew louder, almost deafening. A voice low, guttural, and ancient filled their minds. "The black ship is not your salvation, Captain." Chapter 4, The Awakening. The voice sent a jolt of panic through Islaw's body. She felt the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. It wasn't just in their ears, it was in their minds, reverberating through every thought, every nerve. "Who are you?" Islaw demanded, her voice trembling despite herself. The voice responded with cold certainty, "We are the architects. And you are not meant to control the black ship." Suddenly, the core at the center of the room began to pulse more rapidly. Tendrils of dark energy surged outward, wrapping around the room like chains. The walls cracked, the ship groaned under an unseen weight, and Islaw could feel the air growing thin. There was a presence here, something ancient and immense, and it was awakening. "Captain, we need to get out," Tavros shouted. But it was too late. The ship's interior began to warp, twisting around them as though the vessel itself were alive. The walls folded in on themselves, and before Islaw could make a move, the room disappeared into darkness. Chapter 5, Into the Void. Islaw woke to darkness only this time. It wasn't the black ship's interior. The air felt different, colder, harsher. Her body ached, and her mind was clouded with confusion. She was floating not floating, falling. "Where are we?" Tavros' voice broke through the void, and she turned toward it, seeing his form suspended in the air next to her. "I don't know," Islaw replied, her voice barely audible in the oppressive silence. Around them, the universe seemed to stretch in infinite blackness. Stars flickered faintly, but there was no sense of space, no reference points. Just an endless expanse. Then, in the distance, a faint, glowing shape appeared. It was a massive structure, something like a city but ancient, decayed. Its edges seemed to shimmer with the same dark energy that had once emanated from the black ship's core. The architects had spoken of this. But what was it? "Captain," Dr. Lau's voice was faint but clear in her earpiece. "I believe we've just crossed into another dimension." Chapter 6, The City of Shadows. The eerie glow of the ancient city grew brighter as Islaw, Tavros, and Dr. Lau drifted closer. The air around them felt thick, almost suffocating, as if it held secrets too heavy to bear. Their bodies, disoriented by the sudden shift from the black ship to this unfamiliar void, adjusted slowly to the strange gravitational pull of this new dimension. They floated in a suspended state, as though tethered by invisible strings, unable to move under their own power. Isla looked at Tavros. His eyes were wide, filled with awe and fear. The city loomed before them, its towering spires twisting in impossible angles. The buildings seemed to have been constructed from some black, organic material, with veins of glowing energy running through them like veins in a living organism. "Where are we?" Tavros whispered. His voice was filled with wonder, but it was also tinged with dread. "This place is not like anything I've ever seen. It's like it's alive." Dr. Lau's voice crackled over the comms, shaky and uncertain. "I don't think we're in a traditional dimension. This city, these structures, they don't adhere to the laws of physics. It's as if we're inside the mind of something ancient. The very fabric of reality here is distorted." Isla clenched her fists, trying to shake off the disorienting sensation. The ship's crew had been trained for the impossible, but nothing had prepared them for this. The strange energy in the air hummed, vibrating through her bones. It was as if the city itself was speaking to them, calling them forward. "Look," Isla said, her voice steady despite the chaos in her mind. "We don't have a choice. We need answers, and this city is our only chance to find them. Let's move forward." The group slowly, almost unwillingly, drifted toward the towering gates of the city, where shadows seemed to shift and dance in the periphery of their vision. No door opened to welcome them, the structure itself pulsed as if alive, accepting their presence but unwilling to reveal its full nature. The closer they got, the more they could hear faint echoes in their minds' whispers, voices in a language that neither Isla nor Tavros recognized. It was incomprehensible, but the sensation was overwhelming. As they entered the city's gates, the structures loomed overhead, casting long, dark shadows that seemed to stretch into infinity. The walls of the city were alive with intricate, glowing patterns, lines of light coursing through the surfaces, revealing symbols Isla couldn't understand. The air was colder now, as if it were drawing the warmth from their bodies. "Captain," Dr. Lau said, her voice shaking, "this place, it feels like it's watching us." Isla turned toward the source of the voice. "What do you mean, Sophia?" Dr. Lau's voice was almost a whisper. "I'm not sure, but the walls, they're not just structures. They're alive. The city is breathing. And I think it's waiting for something." Chapter 7, The Architect's Trial. As they ventured deeper into the heart of the city, they noticed something strange. There were no signs of life. No creatures, no inhabitants, just the oppressive silence that seemed to stretch out in all directions. The city appeared abandoned, yet everything about it suggested it had once been a thriving hub of activity. The ground beneath their feet hummed with the same strange energy that radiated from the walls. "Do you think anyone else has ever been here?" Tavros asked, his voice low and cautious. "I mean, truly been here?" Isla considered his question as they moved through the narrow streets, her mind racing. The black ship had left a clear mark on their psyche, and now, this alien city was doing the same. The more they explored, the more they felt a growing sense of dread. The silence was deafening, oppressive. It was as though they were intruding upon something far older than any civilization they had encountered. "Keep your eyes peeled," Isla said, her voice sharp. "We don't know what we're dealing with here. Be ready for anything." Suddenly, the ground beneath them shifted, a low rumble vibrating through the air. Isla instinctively grabbed Tavros' arm, steadying herself as the city seemed to react to their presence. The walls trembled, and the faint echoes of whispers intensified. The symbols on the buildings flared with light. In the distance, an enormous structure rose. Unlike the rest of the city, it was massive and jagged, like a giant monolith. It pulsed with energy, an overwhelming presence in the otherwise quiet city. At its base, a massive doorway stood open. Before they could approach it, a figure appeared in the doorway, tall, cloaked in dark robes, its features indistinguishable in the shadows. It was humanoid in shape, but something about its movements was fluid, unnatural. "Who are you?" Isla demanded, her voice resolute despite the fear rising within her. The figure stood motionless for a moment before it spoke, its voice deep and resonant, echoing in their minds. I am an architect. You have trespassed upon a world that is not yours to claim. The voice sent a shockwave of recognition through Isla. The architects, the beings that had created the black ship, the very ones who had left the cryptic message. They were real. What do you want from us? Tavros asked, his voice shaking with a mixture of fear and curiosity. The architect's response was cold, distant. You do not understand the magnitude of your intrusion. You stand at the threshold of a trial. A trial to decide if you are worthy of the knowledge you seek. Isla's heart pounded in her chest. What trial? What knowledge? The architect's voice, now almost mournful, echoed in their minds again. The black ship was never meant for your kind. You were never meant to awaken it. Now you must face the consequences of your actions. You will prove your worth, or you will perish in the void. Suddenly, the ground beneath them shifted violently. The city trembled again, and the sky above them darkened, filled with swirling clouds of black energy. The structure before them began to hum, a deep vibration that rattled their very bones. Isla's mind raced. A trial? What trial? She felt a growing panic as the reality of the situation sank in. They had entered something far beyond their understanding, and now they were trapped in a test they had not prepared for. Before Isla could react, the architect raised its hand, and the world around them began to change. The streets vanished, the sky turned to blackness, and the city disappeared into the distance. All that remained was a vast, endless void, stretching out in all directions. This is your trial, the architect intoned. Survive, and you will earn the right to seek the truth. Fail, and you will be lost, forgotten. Chapter 8, The Trial Begins. Isla's surroundings solidified, and suddenly, she found herself alone. The team was gone. She was in a barren landscape, twisted, alien, and hostile. Jagged rock formations jetted up from the ground, and the sky above was filled with swirling, dark clouds. She looked around, her mind racing. What is this place? A voice crackled over her comms. Captain, do you copy? Tavros? Isla responded, relieved to hear his voice. We're all here, Tavros said, sounding disoriented. This place is like a distorted version of reality. Nothing makes sense. Isla's heart raced as she realized the magnitude of what they were facing. This wasn't just a physical test, it was a mental one, a challenge that would push them beyond their limits. We need to stay together, she said, her voice steady despite the uncertainty. We don't know what kind of trials we'll face here, but we need to survive. Whatever happens, we keep moving forward. They had come to find answers, to uncover the truth behind the black ship and the architects. But now, the truth would cost them more than they had ever imagined. The trial had begun. Chapter 9, The Trials of the Mind. Isla blinked as the harsh, otherworldly landscape came into focus. Jagged rocks rose like twisted spires, casting long shadows across the barren expanse. The air was thick, not with atmosphere, but with tension. There was something in the air, something alive, waiting. She looked around, but the others were nowhere to be seen. The last thing she remembered was the architect's voice, warning them of the trial. Now, it seemed as though she had been abandoned in a desolate place where the rules of reality itself were bent. The ground beneath her feet felt unstable, like she was standing on the edge of a cliff that could crumble at any moment. Still, she had no choice but to move forward. She had to find her crew, and she had to survive. Taking a deep breath, Isla activated her comms. Tavros? Lao? Do you read me? A faint static crackled before Tavros' voice came through. Captain? Is that you? We're all separated. I don't know where I am. This place, it feels like it's playing tricks on us. Isla's heart skipped a beat. Stay where you are, Tavros. We need to stay together. We'll figure this out. Just keep talking. I'll try to reach you. The comms cut out again. Islaw's grip tightened around the device. She was alone now, isolated in this alien environment, and something about this place felt wrong. She took a few steps forward, but the ground suddenly trembled beneath her feet. Before she could react, a deep rumbling sound echoed through the air, followed by an immense crack, a fracture in reality itself. The ground split open like a wound, and a torrent of dark energy poured through the fissure. Islaw staggered back, barely avoiding the eruption of energy as it whipped around her, sending a wave of disorienting force through her body. Is this part of the trial? She wondered. The crack in the ground grew wider, and from it, a dark figure emerged, tall, impossibly thin, with long limbs that stretched unnaturally. It was humanoid, but the proportions were wrong. The figure's face was covered by a mask-like surface, smooth and featureless, save for two glowing eyes that seemed to burn with an unnatural light. The figure spoke not aloud, but directly into Islaw's mind, its voice a cold whisper. Do you think you can survive here? Do you think you have the strength to face your true self? Islaw's breath caught in her throat. The trial was not merely physical, it was psychological. The figure in front of her was not just a monster or a threat, it was a manifestation of her own fear. The darkness, the uncertainty, it had taken shape in her mind. No, she thought fiercely. I'm not afraid. She took a step back, her heart pounding, but her resolve hardening. The figure advanced, its long limbs moving with unnerving fluidity. You cannot outrun yourself, it whispered, its voice slithering through her thoughts. Your mind will betray you. You will not escape your past. You will fail. Islaw gritted her teeth. I won't fail. In that moment, the figure lunged. Without thinking, Islaw drew the weapon at her side, a pulse pistol, designed for close combat. The moment the figure's twisted form made contact, she fired. The blast of energy hit the figure square in the chest, but it passed through its body like smoke, leaving no trace. The figure didn't even flinch. It continued its slow, inevitable approach. A surge of panic rose within Islaw, but she fought it down. This is a test. I need to face this. The figure's voice echoed in her mind again, mocking her. You are not ready. You cannot win. You will succumb to the darkness within yourself. Islaw felt a cold shiver crawl up her spine as memories flashed before her eyes, faces she'd lost, people she'd failed to save. Her failures. Her regrets. All of it poured into her consciousness like a tide of despair, threatening to drown her. The figure loomed closer, and Islaw's grip on her weapon tightened. But something inside her snapped. She wasn't going to let this thing win. She wasn't going to let her past defeat her. I've made mistakes, she thought, but I am not defined by them. I can change. I can overcome this. With a cry of defiance, Islaw lowered her weapon, but not in surrender. Instead, she focused her mind on the energy around her. She reached deep within herself, trying to tap into the strength she had carried all her life, the resilience to rise, even when everything was lost. A sudden surge of power coursed through her, and she sent it outward. The dark figure recoiled, its twisted form shuddering under the force of Islaw's will. The whispers in her mind grew frantic, but she silenced them, channeling her energy into one final strike. The figure dissolved into the air with a sound like breaking glass, leaving behind nothing but the oppressive silence. For a long moment, Islaw stood alone, breathing heavily, her mind racing. Had she passed the first part of the trial? Or had she simply avoided the inevitable? She didn't know. But she wasn't about to wait for the next challenge to find out. Chapter 10: The Light in the Void. After a few moments of stillness, Islaw's surroundings began to shift again. The fractured ground faded away, and the twisted cityscape reformed, but this time, the air felt different. The atmosphere was charged with a faint energy that hummed in the back of her mind. She wasn't alone anymore. She could sense her crew, Tavros and Lau, somewhere in the distance. A voice crackled over the comms, faint but growing clearer. Captain? Captain, are you there? Tavros? Sophia? Isla's voice was tight with relief. I'm here. Where are you? We're alive, Tavros replied, his voice rough. But I think we're being tested. This place is like a mirror, showing us the worst parts of ourselves. Isla nodded, even though Tavros couldn't see her. I understand. I think I've already faced my trial. We need to find each other. We need to stay together. The comms cut out again, and Isla pressed forward. The once desolate landscape was now alive with shimmering lights that seemed to pulse rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. The ground beneath her feet felt more solid, and there was a strange sense of progress in the air. As she walked, the eerie glow grew brighter, illuminating her path. Suddenly, she heard a voice clear and resonant, not through the comms, but in her mind. Isla Kirin. The voice was unmistakable. It was the architect from earlier, the one who had warned her of the trial. You have passed the first trial. But there are more to come. What do you want from us? Isla demanded, her voice steady but tinged with frustration. Why us? Why the black ship? The voice responded, this time colder, more distant. The black ship was never meant for your kind, but you have awakened it. You will not escape its power until the trials are complete. Only then will you understand what you are truly meant to be. Isla's heart pounded, but she steeled herself. Then let's finish this. Chapter 11, Unseen Forces. As Isla continued through the alien landscape, her mind swirled with confusion and anticipation. What was this place? What were the architects really trying to accomplish by testing her crew? Each moment felt like it carried the weight of the entire galaxy, and yet the more she understood, the more she realized how little she knew. Behind her, she could feel the presence of Tavros and Lao, though they remained distant. The trial had fractured them, but it had also bound them together in a way that transcended physical space. Each of them was facing their own fears, their own challenges. But together, they would have to survive. Isla felt a strange pull forward, an unseen force guiding her. She followed it through a labyrinth of pathways that twisted and turned in impossible directions, bending the laws of physics. And then, before her, the final test appeared. It was not a monster or an enemy but a choice. Chapter 12, The Choice. The path ahead seemed to stretch forever, but Isla felt an undeniable pull towards an unseen destination. The ground beneath her feet felt solid now, though the surroundings remained alien. Ahead, a shimmering, translucent barrier appeared, pulsing with a strange energy. She knew that beyond it lay the final part of the trial, the test that would determine not only her fate, but the fate of her entire crew, and perhaps even the fate of the galaxy itself. As she approached the barrier, the air grew thick with tension. Her heart raced, each step heavier than the last. The whispers of the architects were growing louder now, vibrating in her mind like the hum of an ancient machine. Isla Kirin, the voice of the architect, called once more, this time clearer, more authoritative. You have passed the trials of the body, the spirit, and the mind. Now, you must face the final test, the test of choice. The barrier flickered, and Isla stepped forward, her breath shallow. A sudden, overwhelming pressure pressed against her chest. She knew that this moment would define everything. This test would not be about survival or endurance, but about her decisions, her capacity to choose the right path in the face of the unknown. The voice of the architect reverberated through her thoughts again. What will you choose, Isla Kirin? Will you turn back to the safety of your ship, to your crew, to the familiar world you know? Or will you step into the unknown, embrace the infinite possibilities that lie ahead, and accept the true purpose of your existence? Isla hesitated, her mind racing. The offer was both seductive and terrifying. To turn back would be to return to the life she had known, to resume the mission and face the consequences of their actions. But stepping forward, into the unknown, would mean confronting the very nature of reality itself. She had no idea what awaited beyond the barrier, but something deep inside her told her that the answer's no, the truth lay there. Behind her, the faint sound of footsteps reached her ears. Isla turned around to see Tavros and Dr. Lau emerging from the shadows, their expressions filled with uncertainty. They, too, had been tested perhaps in ways she could not yet comprehend. But they were here, now, at the final juncture. "You're here," Isla said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We're here." Tavros nodded, his face etched with the weariness of the trial. I don't know what this is, Isla. I don't know what we're supposed to do. But I know one thing: whatever happens next, we face it together." Dr. Lau stepped forward, her eyes filled with the same resolve. "We've come this far. The truth is in our hands, but we can't turn back. If this is a choice between the known and the unknown, I say we take the leap. Together." Isla felt the weight of their words, their presence like an anchor in the midst of her swirling thoughts. They were right. This wasn't just her choice, it was theirs, too. The black ship, the architects, the trials, they had all led to this moment. A moment that would define their future. She turned back toward the barrier. The shimmering energy swirled around it, almost inviting her to step through. But something in the air shifted. Something was wrong. The weight of the decision became unbearable. Was she ready for this? Was she ready to face whatever lay beyond? Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled again. A violent surge of energy erupted from the barrier, and before Isla could react, a blinding light consumed her. Chapter 13, Beyond the Barrier. When the light receded, Isla found herself standing in a vast, endless expanse. It was neither space nor time, but something beyond both. There were no stars, no planets, only an infinite void stretching in every direction. And within that void stood a colossal structure, a towering monolith that seemed to pulse with ancient, cosmic power. The black ship was gone. She felt the absence of it, as though a part of her own soul had been severed. But the absence didn't leave her empty. It left her with an aching sense of purpose, a feeling that she had crossed a threshold from which there could be no return. Tavros and Dr. Lau appeared beside her, both looking equally bewildered. "What is this?" Tavros whispered, his voice filled with awe. "Where are we?" "I don't know," Isla replied, her voice echoing slightly in the vastness of the void. "But I think we've passed beyond the limits of our reality. This is something else." The monolith ahead of them shimmered, as if it had been waiting for them to arrive. Then, a chorus of voices spoke, not aloud, but directly into their minds. "Welcome, travelers. You have passed the trial. You have crossed the threshold into the infinite." The voice was cold, detached, but it carried a weight of knowledge that was both terrifying and intoxicating. "You stand before the heart of the architect's creation. This is the nexus of all that was, is, and ever will be. Beyond this point lies the truth, the answers you seek. But beware, for what you discover may shatter your understanding of everything." Isla's breath caught in her chest. "The truth? What truth?" The voices continued. "To continue is to risk everything. To turn back is to remain forever blind. What will you choose, now that you stand on the precipice of the unknown?" Tavros looked to Isla, his face a mask of uncertainty. "Do we trust this? Do we keep going?" Isla took a deep breath, her mind racing. She had faced countless trials. But this was something entirely different. They weren't just testing her resolve. They were testing her belief in the universe itself, in the nature of existence. The architects had created this path for them, but why? She stepped forward, her voice steady. "We've come this far. We don't have a choice but to move forward. We'll face whatever it is together." Dr. Lau nodded. Together. They took a collective step toward the monolith. The voices echoed louder in their minds, an overwhelming presence that seemed to reverberate through their very beings. The black ship was a vessel, yes. But it was also a key. A key to unlocking what lies beyond the veil of reality. The architects are not gods, but the architects of something far greater. And you, Isla Kirin, are the one who will determine if humanity is to remain as it is or if you will guide it toward something far beyond. Isla's heart pounded. The weight of the words pressed against her, suffocating in its gravity. What was this? Was she truly ready to face this destiny? But there was no turning back now. They had passed through the trial, but the real test had just begun. Chapter 14: The Architect's Secret. As they approached the monolith, the immense structure began to shift and warp, opening like a flower to reveal a hidden chamber within. It was a vast, circular room, its walls lined with what appeared to be ancient symbols, glowing with an ethereal light. In the center of the room was a swirling vortex of energy, a rift, a tear in the fabric of space itself. Isla felt herself drawn toward it, her body moving of its own accord. She reached out, her fingers trembling as she touched the surface of the vortex. The moment her skin made contact, the world around her shattered. Memories, images of countless civilizations, ancient and forgotten, flashed before her eyes. Alien worlds, destroyed and rebuilt. Species born from the void, rising and falling. And then, a face she recognized, the architect, the one who had guided them, speaking in cryptic riddles. The vortex rippled with energy, and the voice of the architect spoke once more, clearer than ever before. Humanity was never meant to be confined to the stars, Isla Kirin. It was always meant to transcend them. But you are the key. You are the one who will unlock the potential within your species, or condemn it to stagnation. The choice lies with you. The truth was not a destination, it was a question. A choice. A path forward, or a path back. Isla closed her eyes and exhaled, her mind still reeling from the weight of everything she had learned. There was no simple answer. But she now knew one thing for certain: whatever choice she made, it would shape the future of humanity forever. And there was no going back. Chapter 15: The Choice. Isla stood before the swirling vortex, the pulse of energy around her vibrating through her body, through her very soul. The weight of the architect's words hung in the air, suffocating in their gravity. Humanity's future. Her future. The future of all life in the galaxy. Everything depended on the choice she would make in this moment. Behind her, Tavros and Dr. Lauf stood silently, their faces etched with uncertainty. The truth that had been slowly unraveling before them was now clear, yet unfathomable. They had crossed a threshold into a reality that neither of them could fully comprehend. But they had come this far, and they had made it through the trials together. Now, it was time to face the final test. Humanity was never meant to be confined to the stars, the architect's voice echoed in Isla's mind again. It was always meant to transcend them. But you are the key. You are the one who will unlock the potential within your species, or condemn it to stagnation. The choice lies with you. She closed her eyes, trying to steady her thoughts. Her breath quickened, her heart pounded in her chest. The potential within your species. The word swirled in her mind like a riddle. What did it all mean? How could she make a decision that would affect an entire civilization? Dr. Lau's voice broke through her thoughts, soft but resolute. Isla, what are we supposed to do? We can't simply embrace this unknown. What happens if we fail? Isla turned to face her crew. Tavros stepped closer, his face pale, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and awe. We don't have a choice, Isla said, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. We've come this far. The black ship, the architects, the trials, it's all led us here. I don't know what this means, but I know one thing: we can't let fear decide for us. Humanity needs a future. We need to take that leap. Tavros swallowed, his voice hoarse. And if that leap destroys us all? We have to trust that this is our purpose, Isla replied, her eyes shining with conviction. We have to trust that the architects weren't wrong when they said humanity was meant for something greater. But it's our choice. We shape what happens next. There was a long pause as the crew stood in silence, the weight of the decision settling over them. Then, as if in unison, they stepped forward together, toward the heart of the vortex. As they neared it, the vortex seemed to respond, the energy intensifying, swirling faster and faster around them. A blinding light engulfed them all. Isla felt herself being pulled, her body stretched and compressed, her mind splintering as the very fabric of reality seemed to tear apart. For a moment, she thought she would lose herself entirely. Chapter 16, Transcendence. When the light finally faded, Isla opened her eyes. She was no longer standing in the endless expanse of the architect's domain, but in a vast, luminous space that stretched beyond comprehension. A universe of pure energy, of consciousness, seemed to surround her. It was both overwhelming and serene, as though the very essence of existence was contained within this place. Tavros and Dr. Lauf stood beside her, both looking around in awe. The familiar, physical universe had vanished. In its place was something entirely different, something beyond the boundaries of the known universe. They were no longer in the realm of space and time as they had once understood it. The architect's voice echoed in their minds once more, but this time there was no judgment, no coldness. There was only a sense of finality, a quiet acceptance. You have chosen. You have crossed beyond the veil of time and space. The future is no longer a set path, it is a new creation, waiting to be shaped. The voice paused, allowing the weight of those words to settle. Humanity was never meant to be bound to a single world, a single existence. You have unlocked the potential to evolve, to transcend, and to become more than you ever imagined. But this power comes with a price. You must choose whether you will share this gift with the rest of your species or let it fade into the void. The room around them began to shimmer, and images of countless possibilities appeared, humanity spreading across the stars, colonizing distant planets, evolving into something greater, becoming a part of an interconnected consciousness. But there were other images too: wars, destruction, the downfall of civilizations. There was beauty, yes, but there was also darkness. The choice was not simple. It never had been. Your species stands at a crossroads, the architect continued. You must decide, will you lead humanity into a new era, where knowledge and understanding break the boundaries of existence? Or will you return to the old ways, with all the suffering and limitations that have plagued your kind for centuries? Isla felt the weight of the decision pressing down on her chest. What was the right choice? Could they really change everything? Or would they be doomed to repeat the same mistakes of the past? She turned to her crew, seeking their guidance, their strength. Tavros spoke first, his voice hesitant but determined. I think we've seen what humanity is capable of, both the good and the bad. But I believe we can make a difference. We can break the cycle, become more than just the mistakes of our history. Dr. Lau nodded slowly, her eyes distant, as if she were seeing something beyond the present moment. We've been given an opportunity. But it's up to us how we use it. We can't return to the past. We have to move forward. Isla turned back to the shimmering energy before her, her mind clear. This was the choice. She had never believed in fate or destiny, not until now. Now, she realized that the future was something they could create. They didn't have to follow the same path humanity had walked for millennia. They could transcend. They could evolve. She stepped forward, taking her place at the center of the swirling energy. We will guide humanity into a new era, she declared, her voice firm and unwavering. We will not turn back. We will build a future where we can break the cycles of violence, where we can transcend the limitations of our past. The moment she spoke those words, the energy around her surged, as if the universe itself responded to her decision. The space around them rippled, and the architect's voice echoed one final time. You have chosen wisely. The future is yours to shape, Isla Kirin. The path is open to you. The vortex around them pulsed with light, and suddenly, Isla felt herself being pulled upward faster and faster into the unknown. The entire universe seemed to expand and contract, a living, breathing entity that had no limits. The familiar world was slipping away, replaced by something boundless. Isla closed her eyes as she felt her body and soul transcend. The boundaries between her and the universe began to blur. And for the first time in her life, she understood what it meant to be truly free. Epilogue: The dawn of a new era. The Black Ship, once a vessel of mystery and danger, had been the key to unlocking humanity's potential. It had led Isla and her crew beyond the constraints of time and space, to a place where the future was no longer bound by the past. Humanity would no longer be defined by its flaws, its history of violence and division. The new era had begun, and with it, the promise of something greater. A universe of infinite possibility, where humanity could evolve, not just as a species, but as something more, something unified, bound not by the physical world, but by the very essence of consciousness. Isla stood at the edge of this new reality, looking out at the endless horizon. It was a horizon that stretched far beyond the stars. She was no longer just a captain. She was something more. A guide, a leader, a witness to the birth of a new chapter in the story of the universe. And as the light of the new dawn began to shine, Isla realized that humanity's journey had only just begun.